Hello, welcome to the Sensibly Speaking podcast. This is Chris Shelton, your host. I am doing a very quick intro here. We are actually recording this just within a day of the protests in the UK at St. Hill being done. I will probably skip the queue and put this up as soon as possible because I want people to get this information out hot off the press. So we'll maybe do a special edition of my podcast for this. So that all being out of the way. Hi, guys. I have Apostate Alex and Jeff Beaumont, PTS for Life, who is a Canadian ex-Scientology YouTuber who flew to the UK. Hi, guys. Welcome to my show.
How's it going, Chris? Thanks for having us.
I am pumped. I am really pumped. I think I'm a little more pumped than you guys are right now, just because you guys have probably been exhausted after 3 days of probably not a lot of sleep. I'm imagining you guys probably were quite adrenaline all weekend.
Oh yeah, and our voices too. My voice is definitely gone, so please bear with me.
Yeah, and if I cough a little bit, I apologize.
Yeah. Not a problem. But I'm really excited to be one of the first to talk to you guys after this whole thing. Of course, we talked with Tony and Alex on Friday after the first day. Had a nice live stream with that. But I wanted to. I have so many questions, so I guess I first want to say though. I'm a little surprised, and I don't want to be negative. I want to be positive. So I'm going to say I wish there were more voices talking about this from this weekend in the SPTV world, because this was front and center news. This is very exciting. What you guys put together, what you started, Alex, what you helped with, Jeff, what all of the people who organized this thing, and I'm sure there were a lot. It's impressive. It's awe-inspiring even, it's really like, I'm so proud of you guys.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
And I know that expression comes from a place of sometimes assumed superiority or something. And I don't mean that at all.
No, not at all.
If anything, I admire what you have done because it was precisely the way I have said protests should go from day one. I've been talking about this for years in response to people who do maybe more antagonistic style protesting. I've said that's not so great. What you guys did was perfect. Your signage was beautiful. We couldn't shut up about it. Your attitude was perfect. I mean, everything about it, even, Alex and I talking about, there may be some people coming who might not be so sharing of that compassion and tolerance. And Alex was already all over it, it's like, no, we got that under control. So I just wanted to lead with, I'm just very, very happy about this entire event and what you guys did. And I wanted to put that out there for you guys, because I think everybody should be looking at you with, some admiration right now.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it was the largest anti-Scientology protest in 15 years here in the UK. The Anonymous movement was the last time they gathered a crowd of that size. We had 46 people there on the Friday. It was also the first time, as I understand it, in history that there has been a protest outside the IES event for all 3 days.
Yeah.
Historically, the protest has only been on the Friday, and then it's been nothing for the Saturday and the Sunday. So I think it's definitely a moment, I suppose, in what we did, but it's also just the start, right? I think for me, this was the first time I've organized a protest. So there was a lot of learning, and I was taking things very cautiously in many areas because I just didn't want to mess it up. I had a very frank conversation with the inspector of the West Sussex Police, who made it very clear to me that if you mess this up, he said, I will do everything in my power to make sure you can't protest again next year. So I was under a lot of pressure to make sure that we played by the rules, we did it right, because if we didn't, then that would mess it up for anyone else that wants to organize a protest outside the Scientology headquarters in the future. So I was playing it extra safe, and having now done it and seeing how the whole thing operates and built really good connections with the key stakeholders, I think it's fueled that fire in me to have the confidence to do it bigger and better next year. And the fact that it was already the biggest we've had in 15 years is, I think, it's a good starting place. But for me, it's like, this is the start of a very long process, and it's just going to grow and grow in terms of support from the local community and from SPTV as well.
Great. That's great. And I'll say, in response to, you playing it safe or playing by the rules or whatever, I don't know why we'd want to do anything else. I mean, we're not trying to invade their property, antagonize them, piss them off. We're trying to do a public, you guys, right? I'm throwing we in now. This was your guys' thing. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to get in on this, but I just wanted to say that, but we, the protest, ex-members, right? The people who fight Scientology, we don't want to hurt these people. We don't want to antagonize them. We don't want to put them in a headspace of hate. They're already there. We're trying to bring them out of that, And so I thought that, so I think, painting by the numbers, staying in the lines, following the rules, those rules are there for your protection and theirs. And I think that it's wise to follow them. So I think you chose exactly the right course.
I think I just want to clarify on that briefly. I don't mean next time we're not going to play by the rules. Right. I mean, I allowed things or I let things slip that I let slip so that it didn't jeopardize us in any way. For example, they blocked the right of way. There's a public footpath. They parked cars there and put temporary structures and plants and stuff in place that meant we had to protest in a different place. Now, I had every right to kick up a fuss about that and try and get those things removed and, be a bit harder with our approach on those sorts of things and enforcing of those rules. And I chose not to this time because I didn't want the protest to become about us nagging about these things. I wanted us to be able to do the protest and have to make some small concessions here and there so that we do it right and have a good impact. Obviously, I made the police and the relevant authorities aware of these things at the time, but I didn't pursue it and go, hey guys, look, we need to be there. They're blocking the right of way, blah, 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 because then we become the aggressors. And so I was really keen this year not to do that. But now I have those connections and we have a community that we know are going to come back next year. That gives me the confidence of like, okay, now maybe I can pursue those little things between now and next year so that we're in a stronger position to make more of a stand for things like public right of way and the way that Scientology are interacting with us, which I kind of let slip a little bit on purpose this weekend.
Understood. Totally understood.
And I would say, like, on the note of this being the correct message to send, it means a lot to me that you took so much care and attention to ensure that everyone beforehand knew why we were here and weren't going to just go yelling, F Scientology or whatever, or just Xenu or any of that stuff, because that doesn't work in my opinion.
Yep.
At least my experience as a Scientologist when I was in.
Yep.
If I would hear that, I would just instantly get a ridge and just completely stop listening. Right? Like, you get angry.
I haven't heard that.
So that was important. I think the other important thing, sorry for the use of Scientology terms.
No, I know, I'm laughing.
But it's like the best way to describe it, right? And I think that Scientologists listen to it and understand that feeling of,
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing is with the IES event, what they were planning to do was send a message of unity for Scientology. And what we wanted to do is send a message for anti-Scientology abuse and disconnection and all the other messages that were put out this weekend, that we are here. We're not going anywhere, and it's only getting started, as Alex so eloquently puts it.
Exactly. No, Alex, you guys are definitely for real. And I wanted to ask, because I had, you just suddenly appeared there, Jeff. Was this an impulse thing or what? How did this get arranged?
This has been in the works for weeks beforehand, and it has been extremely difficult. even talking with you and other people to not let that cat out of the bag. I was very fortunate to be able to have my ducks in a row so that I can come here. And there's a lot of stuff that happened in the back end, especially taking care of the dog and stuff with my wife and making sure that's all covered. That of course she's very supportive. She and I worked out so I could be here for the full time without having any distractions at all. So I'm very fortunate to have made it here.
Nice.
And also things like we were extra cautious because we didn't, like I said, playing it extra cautious. I didn't want to do anything that could jeopardize any of our plans. So we kept it under wraps for several weeks that you were coming. We didn't want them knowing that we didn't even want them knowing you were arriving, let alone when, and all this sort of stuff. So I didn't, I kind of leaked a few days beforehand that we've got a special guest who's going to be coming, but that could have been anybody, right? And so I didn't tell people until the day that I was going to pick up a guest from the airport, didn't say which airport. And then it was a day or two later that we announced you were here. And I think that's what I mean, playing it safe is just, I didn't want to do anything that would risk, it's not like they're going to stop you being able to fly here, but they could have tried to interfere somehow. And, I was just trying to play it by the rules. And it's great that you're here. I'm really happy that you're here. And it's been lovely to kind of meet you in person and have you here in the UK, show you around and also have that, like, it's a sign of support, not just for us, but for Scientology, right? The fact that when you were introducing yourself to people, saying, hi, Janet, Lavo, I'm Jeff from Canada, my dad. It sends a message to Scientology that this isn't just me and a group of people that have watched my channel and want to support me. No, this is an international effort. This is a united group of people who want to support each other from all over the world that will come here to protest, to make their voices heard. We are a united, connected group that are working with each other, not against each other. And that's like kind of a sub message that I think we sent just by you being here. I think.
I agree. And I just feel so, I wish I was there.
You have to come next year, Chris.
Yes, there's always next year and the year after that and the year after that.
That's right.
And this was so last minute. The event was announced 4 weeks before it actually happened. I announced the protest the day I found out about it. For context, Scientology hired their private security firm 3 weeks before the event, right? So the whole thing from their side was very, very last minute. It therefore was last minute for us. So in terms of the logistics of getting people like yourself over, it had to happen straight away or it wasn't going to happen. So I was just focusing on planning the event and getting the logistics and operations out of the way. And if people can make it over, that's great. But I think now we have time to plan ahead. If people want to join us next year, if it's back to the normal weekend in October, how great would it be if everybody on SPTV was there in person? Like, can you just imagine the look on Osa's face, And we have time to plan it now. So
that's what I'm talking about right there. Exactly. How awesome. And not surprising at all, of course. I don't know. I mean, you, Alex, were at the class 5 level. Jeff, you've worked in PAC as well as I did. And events, they're always last minute. They're all, as far as Scientology side of things goes and the planning of them and the putting them on and the organizing of them, I was involved intimately with events for years in PAC. And the one thing that we learned after a few years, the only mantra that I could, calm people down with, because everybody was so insane about events all the time because they were so chaotic, is I would tell people, well, the one thing about events that never changes is that everything changes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Everything.
I worked on countless class 5 events. My first experience with events actually was at PAC as a 14-year-old working on the Golden Age of Knowledge release event. Right. And I obviously I don't remember much about it, but I do remember being there, setting it up. But my biggest memory of the last minuteness of events was a Flag World Tour, and they had no one to run the teleprompter, like literally as the event's about to start. And so me, who has never run one before, was, okay, you're running this now. Here's how it works. It was like, oh, okay. And it's like, that's like one of the most important things to do is to keep the steady flow of the talking. And I'm just like some random person doing
just assign this job to some rando right before the event.
And I pulled it off because I'm fairly intelligent and I'm an able person, but like that could have completely derailed the entire event.
Exactly.
So it just goes to show you how they don't plan. They just go.
Well, it's an interesting point because as I'm sitting here thinking about this right now with a long history of events and this IAS event being Tony and I were sort of positing that this was a we're back event. This is a big deal. It's not a small thing for Miscavige and Tom Cruise to show up somewhere. So that alone makes it a big deal. But then, all the big wigs come flying in. We saw the photos. You guys were watching them parade past you. It's interesting to me how the IRS victory event in 1993 and this event and another one they put on that, Golden Age of Tech was actually pretty hastily put together. They were their biggest events.
Yeah.
And when they were trying to have their big events is when they fuck it all up, right? When they screw it all up. We had months of planning on the year 2000 event. And I'm sorry for all the, historical minutia about Scientology events, but I can't help commenting about it because they're so bad at it. And it's interesting how their best events were the ones that were actually thrown together at the last minute like this.
Making it go right.
Yeah, making it go right, exactly.
And I actually think I said Golden Age of Knowledge, one that I was involved in. I meant the Golden Age of Tech in '96.
Oh,
just to clarify that.
Right, of course, '96. Yeah. Okay, so questions about this event. Let's get to talking about this thing, right? Because we know Scientology events are crazy, and while as hard as you guys were working. Putting on your side of this protest, I'm sure there were, a couple weeks of no sleep for some of those people putting on the IAS event. I'm curious, what did you see that we don't know about yet? Maybe I'll lead with that because we've talked about, I watched your recaps over the weekend. You talked about the broad strokes of, and all the, some of the minute details of seeing people, interacting with people. What surprised you the most now that the whole thing is done? Let me reorient to that question. What surprised you the most during the weekend?
I think for me, it was just how unprepared Scientology were for us. I think, firstly, the fact that we were there all 3 days, they didn't expect it. Even though we've had a website up for 4 weeks telling them we're going to be there all 3 days, they didn't expect us to be there on Saturday and Sunday. I don't think they were expecting the turnout on the Friday. I think they're expecting to be a handful of people. We showed up with 46. There were less of us a Saturday and Sunday. That was by design anyway, because it's a smaller event for them. But, they got more and more aggressive as the weekend went on. And I think that's because we really pissed off David Miscavige on the Friday with all of the noise and with the protests and with the traffic. So much went wrong for them on their part as well. It was a major flap. And I think they got the anger and aggression just seeped down the lines as the weekend went on, because by Sunday, we had OSA operatives following us the whole day, doing the typical camera recording thing that you see so often. Literally, I had a security guard that was attached to me for the day personally. If I left the group, he'd follow me. They definitely wanted to be on the attack by the Sunday and shut us down in any way they possibly can. And the Sunday was much more of an aggressive tactic because, for example, they opened the new qualifications building, the qual building down by the stables, which we weren't expecting. And luckily we were able to react to that and get down there. But historically, if they're expecting protesters to be there, they've put up big curtains, for example, around the perimeter, because there's a really good view from the road of their event and of the new building. And when that's happened before, like the Birmingham org, they put up big curtains and stuff so that there's no view from the public footpath or from the road. And they just didn't do any of that. So when we showed up and started shouting, only, what would you say, 50 feet away from 100
50 to 100, yeah.
50 to 100 feet away from, these Scientologists at this event, and we could hear them all clapping and cheering. They could therefore hear us shouting and, doing our chants. Like, they could have done so much to try and prevent us from impacting their event on the day. And I think that was what surprised me the most, was how unprepared they were. And then the flap around how to deal with this on the day, because they were running around like, what do we do? They were like, let's play some music on the loudspeaker. Yeah. Well, as soon as one song finished, we chanted until the next song started. They didn't put on like a really long track that had no gaps in it. Like, these little things like this that just indicated major flap. They weren't thinking about it, unprepared, and they weren't ready for us.
Yeah,
right.
I would agree. I also liked how supportive the security was.
Yeah.
Like, it's just phenomenal. And it's not just security, but the local residents. All of the support.
Let's be clear. We're talking about private security.
Private security, yeah. So there was about 30
York security.
No, of course. Although we did get a few smiles from them.
Okay.
Yeah, just the amount of support that was for us, and the amount of Scientologists that reacted to us in a positive way. Like, I don't know if it's just British politeness or whatever, but I was standing at the gates just waving to people, saying hello. I've got this massive sign and Captain Mickey Witz in my, jammed in my jacket here, very clearly holding a sign, and I'm clearly not a friendly person, but they would wave, and some people even give a thumbs up, but it's like, I'm used to this huge shutdown and don't look, keep your TRs in, don't listen, don't nothing, right?
Right.
But because I'm not giving them that same message of down with you, you terrible, whatever, and I'm not being abusive at all, that completely breaks down their walls and they don't know what to do with it. And so that's why, obviously that message is very important. It was the most surprising aspect to it, that people actually listened.
Well, that's what we've been talking about for years. Yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna say it. This
Toot is that horn, Chris.
No, I'm going to.
I know.
This is why. This is exactly what we want to do. So this is very exciting to me. I have to tell everybody in the audience now. Alex has used the word flap 3 times in a fairly Scientological way. Flap in English is. Somebody's unflappable. They're not stressed. They're not freaking out. Well, that's a word you would use to describe somebody, right? He's flapping or he's not flapping. Well, in Scientology, they turn that into a noun to the event it's a flap. It's an emergency. It's a stressful situation. And that's a very, very commonly used word in Scientology, because there's always a flap of some kind going on. But I have some conjecture, and I wanted to find out what your conjecture is as to why it was such a flap for them and why they were so unprepared. I'm guessing lack of personnel in OSA UK.
Oh, yeah. So for the record, the one OSA guy that I was dealing with a lot on Sunday, his TRs were going out very much. And it's going to be lovely to release that video, but it always happening. But he was actually identified as a PAC security guard. We found him in another video, thanks to a tip from one of my viewers. They sent me a link to 4 years ago, him guarding the doors of the HGV building at the Life exhibition there.
Is this guy Angel?
Sorry?
Is his name Angel?
No, his name is Simon Siegel.
Simon Siegel. Okay.
Yeah. And so he's the main guy there. And you can see very clearly in the other video, he's wearing PAC security. And yeah, he's obviously American. He actually went to Delphi. So he is, and his dad is, I believe, one of the headmasters or executive head at Delphi in, I believe, Oregon.
Huh, interesting. It's not unheard of that they would fly PAC security out to the UK or to various places where Miscavige is, probably more precisely. I know he took some PAC security personnel around with him, like the security chief, from time to time as part of his security entourage. But I have no idea if that's why this guy was there. That's interesting. Huh.
I think it was in answer to your question about why it was such a major flap. I think it was very clearly people like this were there, which meant it was a major deal. It's not like it was just, OSA UK running the show. I mean, David Miscavige is there. It's always going to be extra people imported from all over the world. senior officials trying to run the show and kind of overstep the mark on OSA UK's perspective, because they're like, look, we've got to protect Miscavige, and this is an international event, so OSA Intel running it, and OSA UK are supporting. And that's what we saw. The UK OSA people who were both basically on the gate most of the day, dealing with the police and being there for the protest for us. Okay. And the rest of OSA would have been back of house running the show internally, looking after Miscavige. And on the Sunday, that's when we saw a lot more of the American OSA people and the higher ups. The St. Hill security chief was there with us on a Sunday, physically pushing us into the road, into moving traffic. They were a lot more aggressive. And I think the question was, why do I think it was a major flap? I think it's because Friday, Janet Lavo, who's the head of the church here in the UK, she's the managing director of the Church of Scientology Religious Education College Incorporated, which is the UK business that it runs through. She used to be the head of OSA in the UK. Now she is in charge of the whole church. She was there on the Friday on the gate, and there was a moment where she was getting irate. She was really, really angry because there were 46 people right by the gate. There was loads of traffic. Every car going onto the property had to wait for a few minutes before it was allowed in. And that meant that they were just sat there listening to us chanting 6 inches away from their window. Right. So she was really annoyed. And the security that were working for her actually asked her to go and take a minute, like, please go and leave, because you're angry, take a minute and come back. And I spoke to the security guy afterwards, and this is what Jeff was saying about them being really nice to us, because they're private security. They just want to keep the peace. Yeah. They told me the reason Janet Lavo was so angry was because David Miscavige was on the phone to her, yelling at her down the phone, saying, you need to handle this. Like, why have you allowed this to happen? This protest needs to stop. So that anger has obviously rubbed off on her. And she's like, I need to get angry about this. And then she was asked to take a minute. So from the get-go, I'm like, this is clearly in David Miscavige's eyes a major flap, right? And then it just got worse and worse for them over the weekend. The fact that there was this event happening outdoors, just yards away from the road, and it was completely disrupted by us yelling, stop the abuse, and, Scientology, pip, pip, cheerio, Scientology has to go. Like, there is no way this wasn't a major flap. And you could see by the response of the swarm of OSA operatives that suddenly appeared out of nowhere and were trying to physically manhandle us. And we had to have the police step in to try and stop the altercation becoming too violent.
When was this, on Sunday?
Sunday.
Yeah. Wow, yesterday. Okay, so wow. So stress levels going higher and higher each progressive day. It seems though it's so... Okay, here's what I find so interesting about this, or one thing worth commenting on at least, is we position OSA, we talk about OSA all the time, because they are the ones who engage in and oversee the fair game operations. And those fair game operations are not a joke, and they are not something to be taken lightly, right? They can intrude into a person's life like they're doing with Leah, Mike, Tony, etc., and they can really mess with you. Just talk to the Jane Does if you really want to know how bad it can get. So here's this disruptive, evil organization, if you will, this evil core to Scientology that engages in its dirtiest work. And they can't predict how to keep 40 people away from David Miscavige in one of the most important big wig events of the year, at their big We're Back event, where they haven't had one of these in years. They're this incompetent. They're this caught off guard. And it's so interesting trying to reconcile these two versions of the same organization. Yeah. Right? It's really kind of interesting.
Well, the funny thing is, because I've been watching their tactics for years. Yeah. Right. And I've been part of them over the years. Mm-hmm. And being on the other side of them, this is my first time protesting Scientology. Mm-hmm. When I went in there, I was I wouldn't say scared, but I was nervous because I wasn't sure how they were going to react. And I've seen what they can do. And obviously I haven't seen all that they can do yet. I imagine there will be more attention, but going in there and taking back that power and realizing that they can't do anything in public. When there's that many cameras on them, there's police, there's security, there's nothing they can do. It's pure intimidation. And that's truly all the power they have. And intimidation is only in your mind, right? Like realistically, if you don't give them that power, and by me not giving their power, I felt like it took that power back. And all it does is reinforce my drive and my motivation to do more and more and more. Right. Good. And I know they'll probably come after me. They'll certainly come after you. You are definitely number one enemy in the UK, if not, up there for the world right now.
Oh no, you definitely are public enemy number one in the UK.
And I think I might need to leave now. So I'm just kidding. But you know what? The fact is I'm here with Alex and I'm here with everybody. Is the more voices that there are speaking out, the less power they have.
Yeah.
And that's just a fact because they're losing their numbers. They don't have enough personnel to deal with one major event. And we are winning the day.
I think also it shows like just how I think people have historically been really scared to speak out against Scientology because of the harassment and intimidation that they are so well known for. Yep. I don't know if it's just the UK or whether it's a sign of their diminishing size worldwide, but the fact that they weren't prepared and the fact that it's taken us to get to this point and do so much before they start doing this typical fair game stuff, following us around with cameras like that. It took them 3 days of us being there on site to finally start doing that stuff. I think it's a sign that they don't have the resources to be able to run an event and cater to everything David Miscavige wants while he's there on the property, look after Tom Cruise, who flew in on his helicopter, also deal with all of the guests that are coming, and also look after the security of the event and the gates. And then on top of that, fair game the protesters. That's something historically they've never had a problem doing. But this event for me indicated that they just don't have that resource anymore. An example, with this Qual Library event, the building opening, they had all these little areas along the road where there were gaps in the trees where you could see really clearly from the road. So they did the typical thing you see all the time of getting people with big, golf umbrellas standing there to block the view. And I was laughing and I was saying, guys, I feel really bad for you because you've been told to sit here or stand here all day to obstruct our view. And I'm defeating you with a simple selfie stick. I'm putting my camera on a stick and just holding it above the umbrellas. Like, you are doing nothing here. It's pointless. And they were laughing at that too. I think they saw the humorous side, but it's like, that just indicates that they don't have the resources to plan for these things and then implement something to block it from happening. Yeah. It shows how small and how struggling Scientology is. And I think going back to what you were saying about that being an empowering thing, I think this is just, it should empower other people to speak out because it shows now it's more safe to come out and share your story and speak out about the church because they're struggling to deal with a handful of people outside St. Hill. They're not going to come after someone who just shares their story on YouTube or writes a book or something. You have to be high up on the list for them to come after you. So I hope that encourages other people and reassures them that they're shrinking and so is their power.
Yeah, big time. I want to amplify that message, 3,000 times. I could not agree with you more about everything you just said there. And I've been living that for the last 10 years, right? I've had some shit, but I haven't had anything like, the heavy-handed stuff. And I'm okay. And I've been speaking out, and I'm still speaking out. You guys are speaking out, right? Now, of course, Alex. As I said on Friday in my show, right? Like, you're definitely at the top of the list now. And I hope that you appreciate that that's a position of caution and that paranoia is not paranoia. when you're,
and I also wanted to say, I saw on your critical conversations the other day, I saw you do a call out and kind of say to your viewers, as a community, to come and support me and realize that I know what I'm doing and I know what to expect, but I'm not going to be able to do it on my own. And I do need the support of the community. And I totally wasn't expecting that from you so publicly. And I know you sent me lots of encouraging texts and support. I know I've got your support behind the scenes, but for you to kind of amplify that publicly it kind of took me aback a second. And I just wanted to validate you, I suppose, for that and say thank you, because it's true. Like, without the support of the community, without Jeff, without other people that were there at the protest, I wouldn't be able to be doing this, and I wouldn't feel as safe in doing it. I've had PIs outside my house already. We've had a few scary things we thought are going on that we're not sure about, but we had a physical altercation on Sunday, and we know as a matter of fact that we personally have pissed off David Miscavige, and that is never going to end in anything but attack, right? The policy is attack, 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 never defend. Right. So I'm totally as prepared as one can be for that. But it's a whole different ballgame being there in person and experiencing it for the first time for real. When we were being pushed into the road and this whole thing was going off, even though I knew that was going to happen and I was expecting it, in the moment, you don't know how you're going to react. And in my brain, there was an element where I was like, keep my TRs in, and it just clicked in. I was like, do not touch me, do not touch me, do not touch me, And then after that I realized that that's what I was doing. It then became a place of anger and really shouting from that place. But I think also it was letting out this anger that I've had inside me, because I've never had a chance to come face to face with my abusers, right? This hasn't happened before. I've been speaking a lot about it on YouTube. I've been protesting all day the day before, but this is the first time they are being physically aggressive towards me in the real world. And that just fueled me with even more fire of I'm not just talking here. I'm not just shouting for me. My voice, our voice, is representing so many other people who are currently in Scientology, who just want someone to shout on their behalf. And for people across the world who haven't who haven't been able to speak out because they've not been there, they couldn't get to the UK, or they don't have the confidence to go to a protest, or for whatever reason, our voice is representative of many other people. And I think that just fueled me in that moment to be I need to shout even louder now. I don't care if it wrecks my vocal cords. This just fuels me to try harder. I think there was a point where I said, the more you push me, or the more you shout at me, the louder I'm going to shout. It fueled that fire inside of me that I hadn't felt before, in the same way, and I think that's what really took me aback. Was it's not just me putting on a protest, we are representative of a huge proportion of people that have had their voices silenced, and we here have an opportunity to share that voice on their behalf. And that was just really beautiful, I think, for me.
So beautiful.
That's very beautifully stated, Alex. But actually, the perfect sentiment, and I could not agree with you more. Yeah. I want to ask you more about this pushing match. I mean, what was this about? What happened? Can you describe the incident?
Yeah. So
this was yesterday? This was Sunday?
Well, yeah. So we were just, me and the OSA guys were talking, and all of a sudden I hear this, a little bit of rustling over in the bushes to the left.
If I could, let me back up just a second, just for myself as well, because I didn't see photos of Sunday. What does it look like? How many of you were there? How many of these OSA guys are there? And where are you exactly?
So I gave that a bit of context before you showed up, because I was there first, right? Yep. So the St. Hill property is huge. Mm-hmm. There are 1, 2, 3. There's 3 main gates. There's the main gate up at the top, which is
There's 3 gates into St.
3
Hill?
gates.
Oh, I thought there was just the one. Okay.
No. So there's the main gate, which is where we were stationed. There's actually, for the event, there's 4. There's like there's a in the field next to it, there's a temporary gate where people they enter and leave in vehicles, but that's not normally used. The main gate is where we were at most of the protest.
Okay.
A little bit further down the road is the second gate, which is the Manor Gate. Now that is reserved for the use of L. Ron Hubbard only, who died in 1986, but he remains the only person that's allowed to use that gate, apart from David Miscavige, as far as I'm aware. But that goes directly, like you open the gates and it's literally just there by the manor, whereas the other gate kind of loops around and takes you in front of the castle, and then the manor is just past that. So main gate, Manor Gate. And then round the corner, there's an area called St. Hill Green, which is a tiny little patch of land with a couple of houses and an area that's known as the stables. This is right at the bottom of the property. It's right near the lake that Mike Rinder got thrown in. It's like a bit of a walk from the stables to anywhere else in the property.
Yep.
The stables is where they built this new qualifications building that opened in 2019, but they haven't actually done an opening launch event yet. So when we were coming in the morning, I noticed the big ribbon and the rosette and the ribbons and stuff that you see at an Ideal Org opening. And I was like, they're opening the Qual building, because I knew that was there. I knew it opened, and I hadn't seen an opening event, and it just clicked into place. And so once we set up at the main gate, I was like, I'm going to go for a wander. I just went on my own with one other person. So, so it was just the 2 of us, went down and wandered down just to see what was going on. And it was then that the event was starting. And I was like, oh my God, we have an opportunity here, because they put a couple of buses and cars and stuff blocking the entrance so that the view was restricted. But like I said, you can defeat that with a stick, right? And they had these guys with brollies. So I was like, this is my chance. So I'm just going to start shouting and shouting and shouting. And Janet Lavo, who was standing there at the time, turned around, and I could see the look on her face. It was very close. She was angry. She was thinking, what on earth is this guy doing here again? Mm-hmm. And how does he know this is happening? And what a flap, because half of the audience turned around and saw me with my sign yelling, the abuse has to stop. There were about 150, 200 people there. It was, what was it, 100 feet?
Yeah, like maybe 100 feet.
And so I was like, guys, as soon as I got their attention, they started chanting and chanting. And then we got this swarm of OSA agents show up. That's when I was trying to get a hold of you and the other protesters saying, come down. Like, this is where we need to be right now.
Right.
And then you showed up.
Yeah. And then so I started to engage with the OSA people. Mm-hmm. And you were kind of to my right.
About how many OSA people?
So there was Simon, who's a Luca.
Luca, who's the head. Luca is security for St. Hill.
Yeah.
Then there was
who told me he is private security and Sea Org member.
Yeah.
He's both. So I said, okay, so you're Sea Org. What department? Oh, I'm everywhere. I'm like, yeah, you're with an org. Anyway, there was another lady who we didn't actually converse with a brunette lady. There was a gentleman sitting in a car, which was like a Jeep Cherokee kind of thing, that was playing music loud so he can try and drown us out. And then there was a couple more that weren't really engaging. But the 2 main guys are Simon and Luca. And then so I was talking with both of them.
Just for context, when I showed up, there was like 2 people there, right? Started yelling. You showed up, and within moments there were like 8 people, and that very quickly escalated to 10. And then the police came down, because OSA had obviously called the police, and they came with a van with backup. Like, there was 6 police officers there at one point, and then they realized it's not too much. 2 of them went off, and there were 4 of them there. Like, it was very quickly escalating in the moment.
Yeah. And I had already gone on to this property that they said was private property twice in this little engagement. And then I'm talking with them, and Alex is to my right. And all of a sudden, the Luca, the guy who's chief security, bolts off towards him. And I look over and I see this Steven and you up on the green in front of the Grand Cherokee, which is close to the closest view you can get. And they're
Stephen Jones, by the way, former Scientologist, British guy. He's been speaking out for years. He knows the property really well. He'd made it down there as well at this point. But sorry, I just want to say.
So I look over, and all of a sudden they're being shoved by Luca towards the road. telling him it's private property. And then Stephen Jones and Alex are saying, no, it's not. No, it's not. And then Luca shoves Stephen into the road as like a 1-ton truck comes by very close. And if he had like tripped as he came off the curb onto the road, he would have been smoked by this truck, like 100%. Wow. And the police officers just standing there watching this all happen, physically touching it. In the UK, it'd be called common assault, right? Obviously, there's no charges being pressed because we're not petty people. Scientology would have had us arrested had we done that.
Yes, they would have.
So then Stephen Jones is fighting back against it, saying, no, this is public land. Alex gets in there and starts being shoved by Luca and the other guy as well. And then Stephen Jones, in a brilliant move of brotherhood with Alex, steps in front of Luca to stop him from shoving Alex, like protecting him from being assaulted by Alex, which was a beautiful moment. And very un-SP like, by the way. Absolute support for someone who was just, trying to do the right thing. And then eventually the police said, please get off, and let's talk about it. But it was just pure assault. And the fact is, I had been on there not 5 minutes earlier. No problem with that at all. I was very in clear view of everybody. Alex had been there. It's not their property. And then we're trying to say, we have maps. And anyway,
yeah,
it was
I get it.
Big incident.
I think for me, it was just like, it was such a show of brotherhood was such a good word, because this is why I'm getting so emotional. I'm sorry. Because like at the time, I didn't even realize that Steve, it wasn't until I watched the video back and it was so clear that Stephen actively stood in front of me and started pushing them back so that I didn't get pushed into the road. And at the time, I didn't realize that was happening. Watching it back, it's so clear that that's what he did. And brotherhood is such a good word, because I think that's one of the key takeaways for me personally, was this shouting on behalf of other people. And like, I have an opportunity here to speak when other people don't have that opportunity. So I'm going to do the best I can. But also, we've got each other's backs. Like, it's not in a culty way or a gang-like way. It's like, no, we are all a group that understand how this group operate, and we've all been harmed by this group, and we want to support each other in every way, like humanly possible. And it's not like Stephen watching the video was standing there thinking about it. Like, it was just an instinct reaction of like, my buddy's getting pushed, I'm standing here, I'm like, and I think that it was a real takeaway for me of like, we are all so close. And, the sign on our shirt, united against Scientology, that's what I really, really mean. We are united. And it's not just a, hey, I support you. No, like, we are brothers, right? And sisters. And, that's how tight this group is. And it's things like that send the message to Scientology I wanted to send. Yes, there's the signs and the chants and all of this that that's important. But just by witnessing our behavior, we sent a sign that we are a group of people united against you, and we are with each other, and we are a tighter group than any Scientology group.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's clearly because you're trying to help, and they believe they're trying to help. But in moments like that, especially, and the stress of the Sea Org life, I mean, one wonders, how much whether Miscavige was shoving Luca around, off camera, right, so to speak. Yeah. It's a world that is run. We know this. This is why we're protesting, right? Why we speak out is because we know that these people are not operating with compassion and tolerance and understanding towards each other. We definitely know that, and the world at large is learning that, and so they demonstrate that. In these things. And you could say, well, protests, everybody gets all stressed out and then tensions run high. Yeah, but there's no excuse to be pushing people out in front of traffic. That's murderous. That's really not okay. Like, that's crossing lines that, thank God nothing bad happened, or literally, Scientology, talk about a flap. If a Scientologist like hurt or killed somebody, a protester, holy cow, right? So they really don't even get how destructive their own inner destruction, their whole attitude is. you know, and I really appreciate you going on a roll just now, highlighting how this is the exact opposite of that.
Yeah. One thing that's funny that is Matthew Pritchard. He's one of the protesters who joined us. He's a beautiful, beautiful person. He was trying to actually communicate with the ninja guy who was the OSA guy who was silent and just completely. He was my first cam back, which was lovely.
He had like a mask on the whole day.
All you could see is his eyes.
He was a hood,
all black,
looked like a ninja.
Yeah,
and he was just the whole day. Everywhere we went, it was like this.
Yeah. And so anyway, I introduced myself by walking up to him and doing a cam back with him because it's been a dream of mine for a while now. But anyway, that's beside the point.
That's that. Yeah.
Like a rite of passage.
It's a rite of passage. But so Matthew was yelling to him about ARC. Now Matthew is not a big Scientologist. I think he did some courses and that's it. Mm-hmm. But he understands what Scientology and he's read books. And he was yelling, I have affinity for you. We have a reality on Scientology. Now let's communicate so we can come to an understanding. Like,
nice.
And I just think like that just shows the level of how we're changing. Back in the day with the anonymous movement, everyone was hiding their faces for fear of retribution, which I totally understand. Also is a symbol of solitude and etc.
Yep.
But now we have the chance to unite in that same way with our faces and our voices so that we can just actually become true friends and brothers and sisters and fight against this with way more power, in my opinion. Yep. And these types of movements, I think, have been the most valuable towards Scientology, the ones where people get together and it's not just random protests happening, here and there, or one or two people, but larger groups. I think that really creates a much bigger effect.
I do too. In fact, I'll absolutely reinforce that. I'll also say that I could not agree with you more about the maskless protest. Now, there's no hit on Anonymous. I totally get it. I understand. And the Guy Fawkes masks have as you said, solidarity and unity and messaging. And there's a whole reason for that. And that can go back to Alan Moore and movies and all of that. And so that's got its thing. But there's a point you just made about Scientologists and former Scientologists standing up loud and proud with their faces out. And I've been saying this since the day I took my mask off, right? Because I started posting anonymously in 2013 on Mike Rinder's blog. And then in 2014, after I was declared, it was like, well, fuck this. And here we go. And there was a big difference in how I felt about that. And there was also a big difference in realizing that there is an empowerment to not playing OSA's game with OSA's rules of we're going to hide and, we're going to make you play whack-a-mole to figure out who I am and all that. Because they are going to figure it out. They don't have anything else to do all day but figure that shit out. You got a life, right? You got things you got to do. So there's really no reason to do all of that. And so I think in the protesting space or sphere, right, activity, it's the same thing. I think it's more substantial. I think it means more that you guys are out there unmasked, proudly saying who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, and what this is all about. I think it makes for a stronger protest.
Yeah. I agree. I think there's two things I just want to say on that briefly. And first is, there are people who contacted me on the days of the protest. They came up to me and kind of were on the sly and didn't want to get noticed. And people, for example, saying, I live across the road and I can't stand what Scientology are doing, but I have to remain kind of, semi decent with them because you don't want to piss off your neighbors, right? Yep. So I can't be there to protest, but I wish I could be. Mm-hmm. And for that, there's a power for us in we're representing those people, but also those sorts of people, they can't come and protest with no mask on. If they wanted to protest, they would have to conceal their identity because it would be very easy for that relationship to cause massive disruption to that person's personal life. Whereas for us, it's more of an effort for the church to have to come and do that because we don't live opposite, the opposite side of the road. So I think there's a benefit in people coming with masks on. There are people, for example, who have family members that are still in, who might want to come and have their voice heard and take part, but conceal their identity so that it doesn't jeopardize that personal relationship. So I don't want this conversation to kind of suggest there's no point protesting if you don't do it unmasked. But I think, and I'm not saying you came across in that way. I just want to really nail that is the unmasking thing is actually, it's empowering because it allowed me to be I have no fear, right? And I'm not hiding anything. In fact, the only people that were masked were the OSA operatives, like our friend here with the camera, which made it even more hilarious, right?
And weird.
Yeah.
Well, and he was standing in the complete dark for over an hour in one spot while we were up at the gate. And we just kept looking over and we can see his phone screen lit up. But that's it, because this is a dark country road with no lights.
Weird.
And all we could see is this light floating in the air. I'm like, oh, he's still there. It's so weird. It's weird.
Yeah.
But we did find out that he works at Greenfields.
Yeah. But again, how stupid are Scientology? We found out he works at Greenfields because he was wearing a jacket with a big Greenfields patch on it. This is what I'm trying to say with how unprepared they were. In the past, there would have been someone whose job it was to double check that everybody's wearing nondescript clothing or wearing Sea Org uniform or something non-identifiable. There would have been someone's job whose it is to do that. The fact that they've obviously just phoned up someone who works at Greenfields and is thus a Scientologist and said, hey, you're OT, we need some help here, buddy. Can you come? And he's gone, yeah, okay. And he's just been told to follow us with a camera phone. He doesn't want to be identified because he's linked to the school just down the road that they run and works with children every day. So it's going to look really bad for him to be blasted in the news as this guy that works with kids all day. And in his spare time, he follows around people with cameras, right? Tracking our move and harassing people. It just shows that they're what's the word? Grasping.
They're
grasping at straws. Any little person they can get to help them follow us, they will. They don't have enough staff to have an OSA follow us.
Well, and that's exactly what we're surmising from this, right? Is as in Scientology parlance, there's a lot more cope going on than organize, right? Yeah, they just don't have their shit together. And poor, I kept hearing Janet LeBeau's name all weekend. I've not been familiar with this woman, but my heart.
The grumpy people.
Get it. And I am positive her life is a living hell at this point. Yes. And that's Scientology. It's not, it's not on you that is that way. It's on David Miscavige that it's that way.
Oh yeah. We don't feel guilty about that at all.
No, you shouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, because I knew Janet when I was in London org, right? She was CO OSA while I was at London. So she was coming to London a lot because we at the time, when I was in the church speaking in that term, we were trying to win religious recognition, right? We were trying to get that status to be able to perform a wedding ceremony in our London building. So Janet was at London org a lot while I was there because she was doing visits, taking people on tours and, showing the dignitaries around in order to win that landmark legal case that ended up being won. So I had a lot of contact time with her. And from day one, I just thought, you're miserable. You are a grumpy and nasty person. There was nothing about her that came across where I walked away thinking, oh, maybe she's actually a nice person and has just got a stressful job. No, she's just nasty through and through is what I took from it. And I think that changed over this weekend because now obviously she's been promoted from OSA to now being in charge of the whole church in the UK. And I had a lot more compassion for her this weekend because you could tell she's been worn down by years of stress and being a nasty person because you have to be an OSA, right? You have to be an element of you has to be nasty as part of your job.
That's right.
You can only do that for so long if you're actually a nice person. If you are a nasty person, I'm sure it's really easy.
But let's be clear. You have to want to work in OSA. It's one of the qualifications to be there. So, well, Jeff knows, right? I mean, you don't want to be there. You're out of there. So, yeah, that happiness goes right along with all that.
I think it was visible that it had been wearing her down, because she just seemed a bit deflated and a bit like kind of done with it. And historically, there are videos of her confronting protesters, you know, like face to face like this, like, you need to leave the property right now. You need to leave, and, you know, TR's in and like really aggressive. And she was angry and annoyed, and there was still an element of that. But when she was irate, having just been off the phone with David Miscavige and was told to leave, and she wasn't there the next day, there was an element of me where I was like, she's been chucked in the lake. She's on the RPF. And it's not that I felt bad. I did feel bad for her, but I was hoping that a part of me was like, maybe that's what she needed, was for a protest to cause her to be put on the RPF, and that's what will make her blow, right? And when she didn't show up on a Saturday, we were like, hopefully we've planted that seed now. She's dealt with hundreds of protests before, and she's dealt with a lot of angry people calling her, you know, insane, saying she's in a cult and all that, but she's never had a protest where people are coming with a message of compassion. So I was hoping that that's what would happen. And then I saw her on Sunday, and again, she just looked even more deflated and just like, oh my God, they're here again. And it wasn't an anger this time. It was more of a like, what am I going to do type reaction. So it will be very telling to see what happens with her over the next few months, because she's on all the legal paperwork. Like, if you look up the organization that is the Church of Scientology in the UK, she is the managing director. She has the legal ability to dissolve the organization in the UK because she's the director, right? Sure. So if she's on the RPF and in trouble, her name will be swiftly removed from all of those documents. So it'll be interesting to see things like that. I'm keeping an eye on over the next couple of weeks that might indicate she's in trouble, but who knows?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Now, we understand the RPF, I mean, just not to get all technical or whatever, but the RPF is not a thing anymore. So she's going to get busted, probably.
Just like the Guardian's office isn't a thing anymore.
Well, I'm just saying, they have all the same tools. I'm just saying it's not, there isn't an RPF program as such, which in some ways, by the way, makes it worse. Because then it's a roll your own kind of thing. And people get up to some pretty nasty stuff when they're left to their own imagination as to how to punish somebody in Scientology. At least with the RPF, you knew exactly what was going to happen to you. Having done it, I get to say that, right? Because I've been to the worst, but it can get worse than that, i.e. the whole, right? As bad as my RPF was, it ain't nothing compared to what those people went through in the whole. And that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about that Janet could end up being subjected to that's actually worse than the RPF. And very likely, you know, what's going to happen to her or people at her level for this whole flap, because things that flap on COB's lines.
And it was a flap of the century so far.
Yeah.
At least in the UK. Yeah, no, it's a good thing.
Yeah. No, I think we should pause and take measure of the effect that was created, you know, because it's sometimes people think a tweet, a blog article, a legal decision of minor importance, really, you know, are big things, are like these great big deals. Oh, they're on the ropes now. Oh, we've brought David Miscavige to his knees. No, David Miscavige doesn't give a shit about tweets. He doesn't really care that much about minor legal decisions. And he's just not paying attention for the most part. He's not sitting around watching SPTV grinding his teeth. That's not what David Miscavige does all day. But when something like this happens that directly gets in his way, that is in his vision, right? That he can literally see in front of him. Right now, we actually have some reason to think, yeah, you guys did something significant here that actually that he took notice of. And
I think one example of that, just to give context, is not just him screaming at Janet Lavo. I have a theory. I can't back this up, but I've spoken to several other people including Tony Ortega, who kind of agrees that this is a likely story, right?
Mm-hmm.
I show up at the Qual building opening. There's 150, 200 max people there. They're getting geared up for the start of the event. There's a stage there. Now, historically, Erin Banks, who is one of the spokespeople for Scientology, she opened the National Affairs Office and so on. That's in Ireland. But if David Miscavige is on the property at St. Hill, Tom Cruise arrived by helicopter half an hour beforehand, and it's a charity concert later that evening. Would it not make sense for David Miscavige to open the Qual building, seeing as he's there, right?
Absolutely.
Now, exactly. David Miscavige did not open the Qual building. Erin Banks did. And this is what happened. There was a big cheer and a clap and a like, are we ready to like get the event started? Like, yeah, like whoever's about to host this event is about to walk up on stage. The clapping starts and I start shouting from the top of my voice and there's silence, right? And I keep shouting. Couple of minutes goes by. They turn on music to try and drown me out. In between the song change, I start shouting again. The music dies down and the clapping starts again. Are you ready to start this event? Let's go. Like and then Erin Banks goes onto the stage and starts a speech to open the Qual building. But enough time passed that my theory is the event was about to start, like they were about to walk on stage. David Miscavige, he heard the shouting and was like, I'm not doing it. Erin, you need to do it. And his attention was then directed to handling this protest, because that's the point. You know, Janet Lavo was really angry and all these OSA people showed up, and the event it didn't start at like 3:00 or 4:00 or whatever. It started like 10 minutes or 7 minutes, whatever it was, late. And the fact that the clapping was the kind of, it's about to start now, not a like, are we all ready? Woo, you know, and they do that every few minutes to warm the crowd up. No, it was the welcome the person to the stage clap.
Right. And
then it didn't happen because of the shouting. My theory is David Miscavige was meant to do it, and then Erin Banks took over, he got shoved. And for me, whether or not that's true, if it is true, just goes to show that we pissed him off, and it was a major, major flap. And there's a little bit of personal satisfaction there of like kind of knowing I've annoyed David Miscavige, but ultimately it's like that means our message is getting heard. We are sending him personally a message that he is not welcome. Who does he think he is? You know, swanning over to the UK and, you know, trotting around, raising some money while he's wanted in a human trafficking case, and then flying back to the States on a private plane. Like, who does he think he is? This is the message the locals have. And that's the message I was thinking as well at the time. You know, he needs to be aware of how many of us there are out the gates, you know, that are saying the abuse needs to stop. Not Scientology's bad, but the abuse needs to stop, right? Okay. Pip, pip, cheerio. Scientology's got to go.
Right. Well, it's hard to say. It's hard to know. I think the clincher for me, knowing about Erin Banks' switch off, would be to read her speech and see, is it a Miscavige speech or is it an Erin Banks speech? Right. I'll be curious about that. Maybe we'll find out with the ISN magazine that comes out. Right. But I have no real reason to doubt, based on what you just said there, right, in terms of delaying that speaking event there. You caused a kerfuffle.
And like I said, it's speculation. Even if I'm completely wrong and Erin was meant to do it all along and it was just delayed for another reason, it was still definitely a major flap. The people that were watching the event heard us. You know, it was delayed slightly. Yep. They couldn't drown us out. It's going to be interesting. There's no way that the microphones wouldn't pick up our shouting the entire time she was speaking.
Right.
So are they going to release a video? If they don't, that's an indication that we were heard. If they do release a video, I'm going to be watching it very, very closely to see if I can figure out if she went up on the stage the following day to re-record it.
Yeah, exactly. They dub it, right? Exactly. They dub over her speech.
Yeah.
I also want to point out something that I don't think too many folks have mentioned or asked you about or talked about regarding this 3-day weekend. And that is, we're talking an awful lot about the impingement on the Sea Org and the staff, and we got noticed and, and this kind of thing. And this is definitely one of the goals of a protest. I wanted to ask you directly, what did you notice with the Scientologists, the regular folks who were there, right? Now, we know there was a lot of bigwigs there, and I'm not expecting that Tom Cummins was, brought to his knees or something. But I am wondering, right, in reaching those people, because you clearly did, and we know they're going to cognitive dissonance their way through the thinking, but what did you see?
Well, someone had a conversation with the Reverend Alfredi Johnson on the gate for several minutes before Janet Lavo moved him away from the gate. Like, this is the sort of contact we were having. I estimated the other day, I think we're right in saying about 80% of attendees to the event on Friday walked past us. Like, we had face-to-face contact and interaction with about, I reckon, 80% of the people that went in. And more people, there were only 5 or 6 people maybe that on the Friday were visibly angry, giving us a finger, saying fuck off, all this sort of stuff.
Only about 5.
5 or 6. Yeah.
There was very few. There was one gentleman who he actually didn't even come close to us. They were driving, they were turning right into the gate. And he was asking, he was saying, I'm against drugs. What do you believe in? Or something like that.
He was like, do you support drugs? I'm against drugs. How can you support drugs? And we're like,
I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like slamming the outside of the door. He's in like the back passenger seat, and he's just pissed off. Yeah. But we got people like, there was probably half a dozen people that would gave us the finger over the weekend.
Okay.
Very, very genuinely, because most Scientologists are good people, and they don't want to act like assholes if they're not act like an asshole too. And so we weren't doing that. And they would wave, and some guy actually gave us like the thumbs up and cheered. And
that's amazing. And it's like, to me,
what are you doing?
Right?
When they see this, because this is all being live streamed, and they're definitely going to watch it later or are currently watching it, you're going ethics.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way around it. Right.
Yeah. And just things like, when we were saying, like, we were giving people compliments, like, nice dress, nice heels, you look great. What a lovely suit, have a lovely time, enjoy the event, just keep your credit card safe. Like, I think people were receiving of that message and probably quite taken aback because they're so used to the protesters outside the event saying you're in a cult, you believe in aliens and Xenu. Like, it was, I think they must have been a bit like, okay, these are, maybe what I believe about suppressive people isn't quite right, because they're not coming across as one covert hostility. They're not like trying to get in our way. And we were actively saying, we don't have anything against your beliefs. We just want the abuse to stop. And we want you to know that there's a community of people here to support you if you choose to leave. But that's your choice. Go ahead, enjoy your evening. I hope you have a great time. Like, because of that message, I think they were a bit like, what? Okay. And they listened to it. Like, I was able to say that little sentence more times than you would expect to more people.
Yeah. Good. And I think my main message was, don't give them all of your money. Like, they're going to give some of their money. And I just kept yelling that out. Have a good event. Don't give them all your money. And I think we can all agree that as Scientologists, as public Scientologists, you're going to be asked for all of your money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There isn't one Scientologist in the world that would not agree with that statement.
Yep.
So
yeah, no, they're voracious, and it was the number one button. Even when I was in, right, was constant. It was constant. It was even, I'm not coming to events because I can't stand all the regging.
Yes.
We had to engage in handlings on that, right? Of no, it's not a reg. Is it a reg event? This is how we would. No. Is it a reg event? Yeah. I don't know if I want to come because if it's a reg event, no. There's no regging. There's no regging. Yeah. You only get to get away with that lie once.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what you told me last time, Chris.
Exactly. No, we had a lot of that. And like, I think jokes as well, right? I had a number of conversations with people when the roads were gridlocked and these angry people were getting out of their cabs, having been waiting for ages and listening to us shouting. And I'd make jokes. I'd go, see, this is what happens when COB comes to town. There's massive developed traffic on the roads, literally, and then you get regged to death. Like, is this really what you want? And kind of saying it in that jovial way, you did kind of find that funny. I was like, see, this is literal dev T. Like, there's developed traffic on the roads. There's more cars. That's true. I think that message got through to people because it was, I think, a better message than perhaps previous years.
I am okay. And then I guess there is the Captain Davy.
And this guy.
So this guy created the most smiles of the evening.
Excellent.
And honestly, when I was dancing him around in front of people who were parked there and they had been waiting for 45 minutes, they all laughed. And that sends a message. And when they're looking at COB on that podium that evening, and this is all they see.
No, I think
it's worth
good. I think that's good. I think that was really, really effective, or useful, at least productive seed planting. Which is the secondary purpose of what you're doing there. So again, good job. Any other, I guess I'm going to move toward wrapping up at this point, because I think we've covered a lot of stuff here, and I'm really happy, and I don't want to overwhelm people with even more. So I guess I want to move toward wrapping up, but I wanted to ask, as a final sort of thing here, is sort of, we are gauging this as success. Alex, you've laid out exactly how you guys did this and why and your purpose for it. So I guess I'm wondering now, any last things that we haven't discussed that need to be covered, and or thoughts about the future?
I think first off, it's now that debrief post-event stage, right? It wasn't just about, let's just put on a protest and then it's done, right? Mm-hmm. This is, I've said a lot, and I do mean it, this is the start of something big, right? This is the start of a very long campaign. It's the start of a new movement. It is the start of me redirecting my entire life to focus on this entirely and exclusively. So this is me getting started. And I think it wasn't just, let's put on a protest and show, what we can do. Mm-hmm. It's no, how can we now keep those people who came engaged? And how do we reignite more people who perhaps have come in the past, or ignite new people who haven't protested before, to get them geared up and ready for the next one, right? In between these times, what I'm going to work on in the immediate next few weeks is looking at the legalities and the policies and all of this stuff, that the boring behind the scenes work that happens after an event. I have to have a debrief with the police and with the council and talk about how it all went, and make sure that the communication line is in there for next year, and make sure we're all happy with those relationships. But also looking at things like the public right of way. They put potted plants along the road that blocked us from being where we wanted to be. And that is a violation of local planning law. They put up a sign that was like 2 meters high. Now you can't put up a sign that's like large, that close to a road without planning permission, even if it's temporary. So it's all those sorts of things that now I'm working on post-event, of making sure the relevant authorities are aware of all of those breaches, looking at Freedom of Information Act requests, seeing if I can get a hold of the communication that happened between the church and the council in the 4 weeks prior to the event, because that'll be fascinating to see, considering I was the one that initiated it all and I knew the result of it, but I want to know what went on behind the scenes. Yeah. So that's the immediate aftermath that is going to be happening now. But longer term, like I said, it's the start of something. And my end goal here, I helped people get into Scientology. Now I want to help people get out. If in 6 months' time I get one person contact me and say, hey, Alex, I saw a sign at that protest and that was the start of the process for me and I'm out, that makes the entire thing worth it for me. Like, that is the thing I'm focusing on, is how do I help these people who are currently in wake up, and if they need help and decide they need help leaving, to do that. How do I do that most effectively? And it's those immediate aftermath things, but working on next year, how can we do this more effectively? And instead of just having the same group coming back every year, how do we increase the number of protesters, or the effectiveness of our protest, or the, how do we amplify the message that we're sending if we can't get more people, whatever? Like, how do we make it more effective next year? And that planning starts today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Jeff?
And I will say, Alex, that I have received an email already from somebody who was on the bubble in Scientology. She is a European Scientologist who I've been in touch with. And after seeing in person at this org, what OSA was actually doing to myself, who's an individual, and you, who she knows, and has been watching, she has already emailed me and told me that she is no longer going to church anymore. Nice. She was on the bubble. She wasn't sure what she was going to do. And she has emailed me tonight and said she is never going back in again.
Beautiful.
So this is effective. Yeah. And what we did was effective. So that's one person already. I will say, though, that if Scientology wants this to end immediately, all they have to do is stop the disconnection, let people talk to their families, stop the abuse.
Big time.
That's it. Stop going after us. Stop going after anybody who disagrees with you. You do your own thing. Don't hurt people. This will all end. It's all you got to do.
Like, why are they spending so much time trying to attack us and make our lives miserable and get in the way and stop our protest? Why don't you put that attention into looking after your own staff, right? And giving them proper meal? Like that, for me, that's such a sign of like what we're doing is working. And again, it just fuels me to be like, we need to do more of this, right? Why are they their attention is so misdirected and misguided, and this just amplifies their stupidity and their mistakes.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really, I've not heard this before the live. So I think
I just got it this evening before we came on. So
that's just like, that just shows that what we're doing is worth it. And that just makes me want to do it, like go back tomorrow and do it again now, you know?
What exactly. You know, it occurs to me, like you just said, I mean, the stupidity of this is the following, right? Is you guys are there. You're willing to communicate. Scientology is a creed that says every person has the right to communicate, to say what's on their mind, to speak their mind, right? To talk freely, think freely, write freely, their own opinions, utter, oppose those, of others.
You're going to make me laugh, Chris.
Okay. So that's their creed. Right?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it's the sort of thing I would create a protest sign around. It would be that point, right? And the reason why is because I would want to goose one of these guys into communicating, right? Like you guys were doing. If these guys organizationally would stop being such assholes and stop being so angry all the time, which is just a reflection of Miscavige rolling it down the hill, and actually get in touch and actually communicate with us. Do you know all of this could go away so quickly?
Yeah.
It could be resolved so quickly with a few changes. Now, of course, they'd be rather fundamental changes to Scientology, but we're not asking for the entire thing to be torn down and salt the earth where it once stood. There are things they could do that would make it non-abusive.
And I don't care if Scientology exists. I don't care if somebody wants to believe in Scientology.
Right.
They can believe in anything they want, just like I can. It's the things that are done to people.
Right.
That was done to me. Don't traffic people. Don't do child labor. Don't force disconnection.
Exactly.
Don't ruin someone's life. Like, it completely destroyed my life. My whole relationship with my whole family was gone.
Yeah.
For years. Now I'm getting emotional.
I get it.
Making us all cry, Chris.
Guys, well, this is what it's all about for us, it would be so easy to make all of this go away if Scientology would actually practice Scientology. Which is
for the most part.
Creed, Now, of course, we know the core of Scientology is not that, and so I'm being a little, facetious here, but at the same time, if these guys would just talk to us, all of this could
I think this is the thing. Like, there was much more communication at this protest with Scientologists than I expected. I've been on the other side of it, right? I've been in Division 6, public-facing division of Scientology, selling books, meeting people every day, people coming in saying, you're in a cult, you believe in Xenu, and you just put your blinkers on, you don't listen, you don't communicate. We've had people come into the org and try and film stuff, and the reaction is, call OSA, get Mark Pinchin, the DSA, Director of Special Affairs, to come down and deal with it, and just don't engage. I met John Sweeney while I was out book selling once and offered him a stress test, and And it was immediately just walk away, don't react, don't communicate, just get out of that situation. And the fact that that wasn't the sentiment in the majority over the weekend indicates to me there has been a fundamental shift in the mindset of a lot of Scientologists, right? I think a lot of people were on the fence, having not had an event in years and having not had a physical face-to-face time with David Miscavige, because he's only done a couple of events over in the States in the last few years. Like, a lot of people, this was a make or break event for them. I think a lot of people were probably thinking, this is your last shot. Like, come on, I'm on the fence, impress me. And I think a lot of people weren't impressed. And I think a lot of people, because of that, were communicating with us more, because they're more susceptible to hearing other opinions and listening to what we have to say, not agreeing with it, but at least hearing us out, especially when we come with a message of compassion. That, I think, indicates a huge change that we haven't seen before. And I think that is only a good sign, because it just shows that what we're doing is working. If we just showed up with Xenu and cult signs, those people on the fence, before they even get into the event, might have been all it took for them to go, yeah, no, see, I'm back in. No, yeah, all these SPs are completely nasty and horrible people. And then the event just completely shut the lid. So I think that just shows what we did was important and powerful. And again, I can't harp on about this enough. It makes us want to do it more and better next time.
Perfect. On that, I'm wrapping up, because I think that's exactly what that's exactly.
Make us cry again, Chris.
Yeah, stop it, Chris.
Good. I'm not gonna make anybody cry. We're gonna wrap up. All right. Thanks, guys, for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Really, really do. And again, major heartfelt kudos to both of you. Alex, especially for your organizational skills and wonderment with this.
Thank you.
Jeff, for showing up and really, grabbing some reins and taking charge and doing some impressive work. I mean, both of y'all, you guys did great. You. Okay. And I don't know, maybe next year I can be there with you. We'll figure it out.
I would love it.
All right.
That'd be great. Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
All right. So, folks out there, that's right. We're wrapping up a podcast. Thank you very much for coming and watching. I hope you found this entertaining, informative, and educational, as always. And I hope you will consider supporting the show as a result and supporting their shows. I hope you're checking them out on YouTube. That is PTS for Life and Apostate Alex. Subscribe and support them as well. All right, guys. See you next week. Bye-bye.